Mr. Clerk, it is 7 p.m. I'll call this council meeting to order. Council, before I approve the agenda, ask for a waiver of procedure to allow for Ms. Joanne Russo to speak, to delegate. Councillor Gallo, second. Councillor Gilliland. She's here to speak in regards to the notice of motion on behalf of the BIA. So I need 2/3. All those in favor? Oh, using the, sorry. Thanks, Mr. Clerk. That carries. So can I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Oh, we just did that? With that? Yes. All right, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. No community presentations. We have the one delegation. Ms. Russo, welcome. You have 5 minutes, and at 1 minute you'll hear the little chime.
Mayor Maracas, members of council, and staff members. My name is Joanne Russo, and I am the chair of the Downtown Aurora Business Improvement Association. The BIA supports the motion to approve the canopy of lights on Yonge Street in the Downtown Aurora BIA area. The canopy of lights will serve as a physical and noteworthy identification of the historical downtown BIA area and the businesses that are located there. This will draw the attentions of residents and consumers who come to the area to enjoy the many restaurants and shops, and will help to promote the downtown core. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Russo.
Thank you.
Council, can I get a motion to receive and refer to the notice of motion? Councillor Kim, Councillor Thompson. Any comments or questions for Ms. Russo? Seeing none? Thank you, Ms. Russo, for coming out. Appreciate it. Call the vote. That carries. Consent agenda. We have 2 items. Any questions on any one of those items? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair or Mr. Mayor. Just want to make a quick comment about the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority minutes. I didn't have a chance to attend the minutes that meeting in July, and I just kind of wanted to draw attention to the fact that I'm really happy to hear that there was some funding that was approved for the National Disaster Mitigation Program for a flood mitigation project. And I was wondering if maybe Councillor Gardner would happen to have any information about what that, if there was a specific project they had talked about there, or something you can kind of share with council a little bit more about that.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner, did you have anything else to share on that?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you completely.
Yeah. Councillor Gilliland, could you just restate that again?
There
Because and I'll be honest, it was, maybe if you can get a bit closer. For some reason, it seems a bit low. Maybe if you can, someone could turn up the volume a little bit. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Yeah? I was just saying I want to draw attention to the correspondence and congratulations that the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing had granted a funding approval for $431,000 and change for the National Disaster Mitigation Program for a flood mitigation project. And I think it's great and it's fantastic news. I happen to not be there, and I was wondering if there was any conversation about a specific project that they had ongoing, or they were talking about, or in talks, that maybe you could share with council about that meeting.
Councillor Gardner?
Whenever I go there, I'm always interested in what they've got for Aurora, and there's nothing for Aurora in that money. That is going to their ongoing projects that they have on, that they are already doing. So yes, it's a bonus, but it's not really adding anything to the scope of their work that they're doing. So that's what I'm always looking for, to see if money from the government, other levels of government, is going to enhance the service that Lake Simcoe provides to us. And in this case, it doesn't. I don't know if that answers your question.
Councillor Gilliland?
Be a positive since it is funding that we never did have, and I know that the funding is not exactly easy, so was it somewhat of a, I think it's somewhat of a win that they did get the funding. Would you not agree with that, or?
Councillor?
Trying to make is that the funding is not going to go to allow them to do anything new. It's going to support what they're already doing. And I mean, flood control is their mandate. I would always hope that money, like sometimes with us, with council, sometimes the money that we get from government just supports the projects that we already have on the books, and sometimes it enhances. And in this case, it didn't enhance anything as I hoped it would. And we can talk more about this offline. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I too have a question with regards to the financial up-to-date for Lake Simcoe. When Bill 108 came out, it contained revisions to the Conservation Authority Act, and then I remember when we were at AMO, a letter had come out from the minister talking about core functions and non-core functions and winding down some programs, and there was considerable talk about reduction in funding for the conservation authorities and that they would have to get more funds from their municipal partners. So I guess, in that financial up-to-date, was there any conversation about what the impact of Lake Simcoe is with the Bill 108 and those subsequent conversations, and will they be looking for increased fees from their municipal partners?
Councillor Gardner?
And I will forward. I don't know if council actually got the letter from Lake Simcoe about what these changes are going to mean to the Conservation Authority. The answer is yes to both of your questions, and the Conservation Authority is providing a lot of services right now that we don't pay extra for. Because of the reduced funding, we are now going to pay extra for them. So it'll be a matter of bringing the services to council's attention, and then council saying, yes, we want to keep the service, or no, we don't want to keep the service. And to me, it's problematic because every service that they're providing to us are necessary services. So, but I will give that letter to the clerk so he can forward it to everyone. Now, we should all be in the loop. It's worrisome. It's going to be worrisome for our budget process.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson?
If I may, a subsequent question. It also says that they're going to end this year in a forecasted deficit of $82,000. Are additional measures being done to kind of mitigate that, or?
Councillor?
That at the end of the day is not going to be problematic because it will be made up for in the next year. No, I think there are initiatives that are going to make. Okay, you know what? I need to check into that, and I can probably do it after the council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson? Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions on C1 or C2? Councillor Gardner?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I had a medical procedure, and it seems that it's fried my brain and my fine motor skills slightly. Yes, with respect to C1.
Yes.
This is under the new business section, my comment. And I know that, or perhaps I wasn't clear in my comment. No? Could the clerk tell me what, because I have two different, thank you. I have two different comments. That new business, when I was speaking about the Intercultural Festival, I wasn't talking about confusion in the admission. My comment was more about disappointment on the part of the residents and myself as a council member, because council approved funding And we actually advertised on our website that this was an all ages event. And it turned out that it wasn't. It was only for people of drinking age. I don't think that comes through in the comment section. And the second one was about the public's comments about a proposed cannabis location. And you said, Mr. Mayor, and we said as a council that we would be looking at the public's comments before we sent in our own. And unfortunately, that wasn't the process that the Ontario government put out. But I think we need to be careful before we make commitments to the residents. And maybe it's hard to know what the province has in mind, but I think that we should be more careful about that in the future, because some residents have actually called me on that, and I couldn't, there was nothing I could say because we told them something that didn't actually happen. So that's that for C1. Thanks.
Thank you. So did you want the minutes to be changed to reflect what you're saying?
Mr.
Or did you
Clerk,
just
is it
want to,
possible?
or did you just want to speak to it? Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll certainly review the video and if we are incorrect, we'll make the change administratively.
I must admit that my comments went on for a bit, so you may not have been able to get my meaning. Okay, maybe we can talk about that. Thank you.
Anything else, Councillor?
No, that's fine for the Cs. Thank you.
Okay. Council, if I can get someone to move and second approval of C1 and C2. Councillor Gilliland, Councillor Humphreys. Call the vote. That carries. Standing committee reports. Would anyone like to pull anything? Seeing none, can I get a motion? Oh, I'll get a motion to, well, actually, wait, Councillor Gardner.
I'd like to pull C1, 2, 3, and 7.
So R1, S1, R1,
Oh, sorry, S1,
R2.
2, 3, and 7. Yeah.
and R7.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Seeing none, you get a motion to approve standing committee reports R3, R4, R5, and R6. You pulled R3? I apologize. Sorry. So can I get a motion for 4 to 6? Councillor Kim, Councillor Gilliland. Call the vote. That carries. S1, R1. Councillor Gardner.
On it, it's the item about the sidewalk construction on Adair, Bailey, Davidson, Browning,
Are you
Johnson,
moving?
Holman, and Baldwin. I'd like to move it.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Humphreys. Comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. That carries. R2. Councillor Gardner, you pulled this one as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I spoke to this last week, and I've spoken to Ms. Van Leeuwen in between. I've been thinking about it. It's all, this development is on Yonge Street South, and it's not in a very populated area, but it is in an area that has a lot
Councillor, can I get a motion?
of approve as is.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, second. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. This development is in an area that has a lot of open space because is a lot of open space, and it's also estate residential. And I know how noise can carry. So I'd like to ask Ms. Van Leeuwen, what is it, to the best of your knowledge, that the City of Toronto might have with respect to noise mitigation strategies when it comes to continuous concrete pouring?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe that they have yet developed those standards for those noise mitigation plans. I understand that there's going to be a bit of a transition period. The amendments come into effect October 1st, and they're, I think in the next 3 months, they're going to develop standards for those mitigation plans. I have looked at some mapping, and this particular property is surrounded by green space and natural buffers, and including some hills and berms that will mitigate the noise.
Counselor?
Well, and I agree with you on that. And I happen to live in an area where there isn't as much noise buffering, but I do hear noise from the soccer club, and it's not that close to me. So I'm thinking, with these things, you don't hear from residents beforehand. You hear from residents after, when the noise starts, and then they get upset with us. So if there's anything that we can do with respect to noise mitigation, let's do it. It may not be possible, but let's do our best to see what we can do, so that if residents come to us, we can say, well, we've done the work, we've tried our best, and this is how it is. Thank you. And the other thing is, you were going to see if they would consider starting work at, I believe it was 7. Our own noise bylaw says 7 o'clock in the morning. This one was going for 6 a.m. So I'm wondering if you had any result with that.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I did receive a response from Tridel, and they would like to request the 6 a.m. start to optimize productivity on site.
Counselor?
So if this becomes problematic for the residents, do we have any ability? I mean, 6 a.m. is pretty early to be waking up residents. That's why we have 7 o'clock in our noise bylaw. I can understand it helps the developer to start at 6, but it doesn't help the residents. So is there any possibility to change that? Should we get resident feedback about the earlier start?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
The only thing I can think of, through you, Mr. Mayor, off the top of my head, is that we put a time limit on this exemption and monitor.
Counselor?
What would the time, through you, Mr. Mayor, what would the time limit be?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
We could do a period of 3 months, for example, monitor during that period. We will also request that the developer does provide notification to the surrounding neighbors and surrounding properties.
Counselor?
Thank you. So I would like to ask council if they would consider putting a 3-month period on this special exemption that starts at 6 o'clock in the morning, because we already have a 7 o'clock start and lots of issues with residents complaining about that, and also contractors starting earlier than the 7 o'clock. And I know Ms. Van Leeuwen knows all about that from the tannery on Tyler Street. So could we give them, we've never, just to the best of my knowledge, through Mr. Mayor to Ms. Van Leeuwen, we've never allowed a contractor to have a 6 o'clock in the morning time start, have we?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did provide an exemption for a site on William Graham, and we didn't put any time restrictions on it at all.
Counselor?
Thank you. With council's permission, I would like to put a 3-month limit on it. Try the 6 o'clock in the morning, and we can always, it gives us some leeway should we have residents who are very unhappy about this. So that
Councillors,
would be my amendment.
Is that an amendment?
That is my amendment.
And what's the amendment?
It needs a seconder.
No, but what's the amendment?
That we put a 3-month,
Time limit?
but Ms. Van Leeuwen had different words, like more of a trial period. Ms. Van Leeuwen, can you help me out here, through you, Mr. Mayor? I mean, we don't want to stop them from doing this work. We know they have to do it.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we could put a 3-month time limit on the 6 a.m. start time. We would require a report back to council in order to get an extension of that exemption. If there's no complaints, if there's no issues.
Thank you.
It's sorry, it's a little more work for everybody, but I think it's prudent for the residents. So, if somebody wants to
Does
second it,
someone want to second that? I'm seeing none.
thank you. That's fine, and we'll deal with it when and if the residents come to us.
Thank you.
But just for clarification, Mr. Mayor, once we say it's 6 a.m., we can't change it.
That's correct. And you're at your 5 minutes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think, I understand where Councillor Gardner's coming from. It gives us a little bit of leeway, but I also believe that once this gets moving, and if we do get exceptional concerns that we can look at that time, I don't want to put a time limit on it, because after 3 months, they've already heard it for 3 months, so I think we'll know before it gets kicking off that this is really intolerable, and we could probably do something quicker. We'll see. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gallo.
Just for clarification, I heard that once we do this, we can't change it. And can someone just verify that? If we're having a lot of problems, why can't we
Ms. Van Leeuwen.
put it to 7?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this would be an exemption to the noise bylaw and would be a reconsideration
Which
of
we could do.
council decision.
Which
And
we
so-
could,
If it was within the 6 months.
which we could do.
And I agree with you, Councillor Gallo. I mean, we could always reconsider and pull the exemption.
Absolutely. I mean, we are the ultimate decision makers.
Thank you.
So, yeah. I think that would be my approach. Let's leave it. If there's a problem, we reconsider it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, call the vote. That carries. R3, Councillor Gardner.
This as is, if somebody else would like to.
Anyone would like to move this? Councillor Gilliland, seconded by Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Gardner, floor is yours.
Thank you. My problem with this is not the initiative, it is the wording of the recommendation. In particular, it says, number 2, it says, offering plastic straws to customers rather than serving them automatically. So when I look at page 5 of the report in bold, what the report is saying, Aurora should implement an offer first policy where a plastic straw is offered when required rather than automatically given at all town facilities and town-run special events. So maybe I'm being too particular here, but I would like the wording to say offering plastic straws to customers when required rather than serving them automatically, because that is actually what it says on page 5 as the recommendation.
Mr. Clerk, I would take that as a friendly amendment if the mover and seconder is, I mean, that's fine. So if the mover and seconder is okay with it? Yeah? All right, it's a friendly amendment.
So for clarification, Mr. Mayor, it would be offering plastic straws to customers when required rather than serving.
So we would add the words
Just
when,
insert.
when required.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Is that all, Councillor?
It is.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. That carries. And R7, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. Move as is.
Thank you. Second. Councillor Gallo. Councillor Gardner.
So, Mr. Mayor, you tasked me last week with looking at the information from, actually the approval from the Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority with respect to removing the holding provision on the Highland Gate development. There were certain conditions. One had to do with making sure that there would be no increased flooding, and the other was the pond and channel restoration to improve the fishery habitat. So I might have to stand for this. This is what they gave me. Everyone can see this? So I will tell you that I did not go through that, and I will return it to planning. But I did go through the two letters. One was from the Planning Engineering Department of the Conservation Authority, and the other was from our own engineering department, and they both said that they are fine with this report and fine with everything the developer is planning on doing. And I would say that I'm hopeful, and we will see if in particular there isn't any increased flooding after construction, but we won't know that till it's actually in place. And I am a little concerned.
Thank you. Didn't realize the binder was so thick. But thank you for attempting to pick it up.
Just did my exercise.
I don't know who this question's for. I guess maybe for Mr. Serio. Mr. Serio, legally, I would love to withhold the removal of this holding provision until they complete the park. Is that a possibility?
To you, Mr. Mayor, it shouldn't be a possibility. It'd probably be acting in bad faith because the hold is on for certain reasons, and once those reasons have been fulfilled, then they're entitled to have the hold lifted. Also, if you do decide to not remove the hold, they do have the ability to appeal that.
Thank you. Not the answer I was looking for, but I understand you're going to give me that answer. But, you know, I would say that, you know, the park was supposed to be done by now and it's not. And so I think there would be a reason for us to look at doing whatever we can to ensure that they uphold their parts of the agreement. So, but it is what it is, I guess. Thank you. Any other comments or questions, Council? Call a vote. That carries. Off to the regular agenda. Not there yet. Under the S. Mr. Clerk, we don't do new business until after the regular agenda. Is that correct?
I spoke with Councillor Gardner earlier this evening, so I know what she's talking about. Councillor Gardner, I would suggest bringing up that under new business in tonight's meeting. What we talk about with the standing committee report is just items that were passed, not the new business section.
Okay. So back to the regular agenda. R1, 2020 Capital Investment Program, Strategic Asset Management Policy, and 10-year Asset Management Plan Overview. We have a presentation to be provided by Rachel Wainwright Van Kessel, our Director of Finance. Council, what are we doing, 15? Council, normal time is 10 minutes for presentation, so if I can get a motion to extend to 15 minutes. You need more than that? 20? 20 minutes. 20 minutes? 15's okay? Okay, so we'll do 15. I prefer 15 as well, but. All right, 15 motion. Councilor Gilliland, Councilor Kim, all those in favor. Actually use, no hands? All right, hands. All those in favor? Opposed, that carries. Rachel.
Okay.
Floor is yours.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'm pleased to present to you the 2020 capital budget. So tonight we're going to go through a bit of an overview of the budget. That'll include an overview of the 10-year capital investment plan, the capital investments for 2020 in our three categories: repair and replacement, growth and new, and studies and other. Then we'll take a look at the reserves, and we'll also look ahead to some options to modernize the capital plan and next steps in this process. Taking a look at the budget at a glance, the proposed capital budget for 2020 is $24.6 million, and as you can see, repair and replacement is the largest portion of that. The 10-year capital investment plan is $198.2 million, and we also have $106.3 million of previously approved active capital projects. Should also note this evening that the fleet budget is not included in this budget. We are still waiting the results of a consultant study, and that will come forward at a later time. When looking at this year's 10-year capital plan compared to the one presented last year, the 10-year capital plan is $44.3 million less, and the main reason for that was the conditional approval of the Library Square project at $35 million last year. When we look at the 9 common years from 2020 to 2028, the capital plan is actually $9.3 million higher than it was last year, and there's a little bit of movement in the first couple of years. So looking just at this year's 10-year capital plan, we're at $198.2 million. The blue stacks indicate the repair and replacement budget, which is about 61% of the capital over the next 10 years. The green is the growth and new, representing 37% of the budget, and studies and other at 2%. Now turning our attention to the capital that's proposed for 2020, repair and replacement, or asset management, reflects most of the capital plan at 82%. You can also see that most of the capital plan is funded through cash to capital reserves, which come from tax levy, rate reserves from the water and sewer rates, and then they're topped off through provincial and federal grants and development charges and a few other smaller reserves. Now we'll take a look at the 3 different types of capital, starting repair and replacement, which promotes good asset management. Our 10-year repair and replacement plan is $121.7 million. As you can see from the blue pieces on the bottom, that reflects the tax levy funded assets, and they make up the larger share of the capital in this 10-year plan. This will likely change over the next 40 to 50 years as the underground infrastructure will come closer to the end of its useful life and will reflect a larger share of the capital investments at that time. Next year, in 2020, the capital projects proposed are $20.2 million for repair and replacement, with planning and development services having the largest share, just a little over 3/4. And as you can see in repair and replacement, most of our funding from this comes from the cash to capital or tax levy reserves, and then the rate reserves for the water and sewer infrastructure, and topped off with federal and provincial grants, which can be a little unpredictable. This map will also be in a larger form in your budget binders that you receive later this evening. It gives you an overview of where the repair and replacement capital is going to be occurring throughout the town of Aurora in the 2020 budget. So now looking a little bit more closely at planning and development services, which has 15.3, or the largest share of the repair and replacement budget. 12.2 million is represented in green for the roads repair and replacement, roads reconstruction and related underground water and sewer assets, with 1.9 million shown in red for roads resurfacing, Storm sewer works are shown in blue and represent 1.2 million, and planning's also seeking $10,000 for a GIS scanner. The capital and community services is for our facilities at 2.9 million. The largest share of this is for the work that's planned at the Aurora Public Library. This work, along with the work that will be done at the 22 Church Street School, will be done as part of the Library Square project. Operational services is looking at $1.2 million in repair and replacement capital, the largest share of this being at Parks, which will include the continuation of the Emerald Ash Borer Management Program, replacing playground equipment, and some trail maintenance. Roads will be continuing maintaining assets based on the annual sidewalk inspection and maintenance program, and through the infrastructure inspections, repair, and maintenance programs. In addition to this, we'll also be updating our Christmas decorations. The water and sewer includes one project, which is replacing the aging Vandorf lift station pumps. Now, the smaller groups in this capital program are the corporate management groups. That includes finance, corporate services, and the Office of the CAO. In finance, we'll be continuing on with the water meter replacement program. Corporate services investments are in information technology, and the Office of the CAO will continue the work on the modernization of the Town of Aurora's website. This slide and the one that follows shows you the new capital projects that were not in the plan last year. So these are new to the 10-year plan. This slide shows the project for planning and development services and the ones for operational services. And this one shows the projects in community services and corporate services. While this does look like a fair number of projects, it should be noted that these projects total $835,000, and they represent only 4% of the overall repair and replacement requested for 2020. Next, we'll turn our attention to growth and new, which supports our growing community. In growth and new, operational services has the largest portion, or just a little bit over half of the capital request for 2020, and planning development services has the next largest piece. It should be noted that growth generally pays for growth, so that's why development charges is represented as the largest funding source. There are 4 projects in growth and new, which represent 82% of the capital plan. The first project listed here, the sidewalk on Leslie Street, is actually being delivered by York Region as part of one of their larger projects, which is under construction. The next project, the Wildlife Park, is the final contribution for the snow storage facility. That includes the paving at Lambert Wilson Ballpark Diamond 4, and this will provide better use to the location year-round. The last one here is a new trail network, which is planned for the Matamay Phase 4-5. These are the 8 projects that are new to the 10-year plan for growth and new. These projects represent $517,000, or about 16% of the capital that's requested for 2020. Now we'll move on to our final group, which is Studies Another. This group helps us plan for future capital needs and operational needs. So the capital in this group is a much smaller amount at $1.1 million. Most of it's actually delivered by the corporate management groups of finance and information technology in corporate services. And then there's another significant portion in planning. As you can see, this group is wholly paid for through tax levy reserves from cash to capital. In this group, 5 projects represent 74%, or almost 3/4 of the budget for Studies Another. The largest of these being for implementing recommendations from the Information Technology Strategic Plan, and then there is a project for the Climate Change Adaptation Plan, Building Condition Assessment and Energy Audit, and Municipal Heritage Register Review and Update. There is also a project in here for the Community Benefit Charge Study, and I'll get into that a little bit more in a couple of slides. These are the new projects which are added to the 10-year plan for Studies Another. They represent $785,000 of the Studies Another, or 72%. Next, I just wanted to spend a bit of time looking at reserves. Reserves are used to pay for our capital projects, and the town have reserves that come from tax levy sources, user rates, federal and provincial grants, and development charges. Given the changes which are coming as a result of Bill 108, we'll start with development charges. Currently, our development charge forecast in the green for the previous bylaw and this bylaw includes about 2/3 for soft services. So the reason why soft services and hard services are relevant in our development charge bylaw is because that's going to change under Bill 108. So soft services include things such as parks and recreation, library, municipal parking, general government, whereas hard services include engineered infrastructure including roads, water and sewer, protective services like fire, and public works facilities, fleet, and equipment. Now, as I mentioned, under Bill 108, these are going to be treated very differently. While hard services remain part of the development charge, the soft services, or 2/3 of what our current charge is going to move to a new community benefits charge. This community benefit charge needs to be in place by January 1st, 2021 for us to continue to collect for soft services. If we do not have a community benefit charge in place at that time, we'll no longer be able to collect. This budget does include a project for that. We are still waiting on more information from the province. What we have heard so far is that this should be revenue neutral, but we have yet to see how the community benefit charge will be structured or calculated. There are also going to be changes for the way hard services are paid for. The rates will be frozen at the time of the site plan agreement and then payable at the time of occupancy. However, for non-residential, rental, and nonprofit residential developments, the payments are going to be made over a longer period of time. It'll be 5 years for the non-residential and rental developments, while it'll be 20 for nonprofit. In addition to this, secondary suites will now be exempt from development charges. Given the changes to the timing of these payments, municipalities will be able to charge interest and include financing charges in the development charge. So that is why we have included the project to establish the community benefit charge in 2020, and we'll also look at an amendment, as part of that project, an amendment to the development charge bylaw. So now how we looked at how we're paying for growth, we'll take a look at asset management in a little more detail. So I wanted to start by taking a look at how we're contributing to our asset replacement needs versus how much our current amortization cost is. So here on the left, I'm showing the total of our assets, the water rate assets in the middle, and the tax levy on the far right. The dark blue stacks indicate contributions from our reserves, whether it be tax levy or user rate, and they are topped up by provincial and federal grants. Now, grants, these are estimates based on what we're currently receiving today, but they could change based on the upper tiers of government. As you can see currently, our contributions to asset management do not meet the amount that we're paying for amortization. Now, amortization is based on the historical cost of assets, and there are some assets which have already reached the end of their useful life. So this is a little bit concerning, but we need to do more analysis here. Now, you probably expect those bars in teal, which reflect the average 10-year draws, to be higher. For water and wastewater, as I mentioned earlier, the length of the assets is much longer, so this is why it's lower in this period of time, 40 to 50 years, that'll change. But for the tax levy assets, as we saw earlier, the plan does taper off towards the end, so the 10-year plan may not be as complete as it needs to be. This is why we need to start doing more longer-term analysis on for our asset management reserve contributions, and this will help us in determining the right fiscal strategy contributions, which help support long-term asset management. As you can see here in the dashed line, that indicates the town's goal of contributions at 2 times the average annual spend, and we do not meet that in this year's budget. However, the situation indicated by the solid line is not quite as bad as it looks. We pre-fund our projects. So when we approve a project, we fund it and we move the money out of the reserve. So that doesn't necessarily reflect the timing of when the cash is paid. As you can see, we have $106.3 million in approved and funded projects, but we've only spent $56.7 million. So that indicates that we're going to be spending some of that money over the next couple of years. So the amount that's in the reserve balance when pre-funding doesn't necessarily translate into cash in the bank. The conditionally approved of 56.5, the largest portion of that is represented by the Library Square project. So now when we look at the overall reserve balances, you can see the dashed line reflects the total amount, and our overall reserve picture is improving. And when we do have reserves that go negative, we can fund from our other internal sources. Now we're going to look ahead at the way we're going to modernize the capital budget and our next steps. So we are looking at implementing a number of continuous improvement initiatives, starting with bringing the approved and proposed capital together. By doing this and considering capital commitments along with their projected timing of spending, we can do a better job in developing long-term reserve management, develop more sophisticated development charge revenue models, and refine the fiscal strategy. Because by refining the fiscal strategy, that'll help us achieve long-term financial sustainability. And the three main elements for that are capital planning, reserve management, debt management. So turning our attention back to where we are today, this is our process. We have 2 budget committee meetings scheduled and back to council at October 22nd. Just want everyone to note, based on discussions with Finance Advisory Committee, we will be not yellow lighting projects. So we will be considering projects to approve or not approve. We are recommending that projects that are in the asset management or repair and replacement category that are not approved are not removed from the plan, but are just retimed because we do need to maintain our assets. However, projects in the other 2 categories we could consider for, based on the discussion and direction from Budget Committee, changing the timing in the capital plan or removing them from the capital plan. So as we look forward to Budget Committee, I just want to thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. This completes my presentation for this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, can I get a motion? Do I need a motion to approve the presentation? To receive? Motion to receive the presentation. Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Thompson, comments or questions to the presentation? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you very much. With respect to the change in how the DCs are recognized, the way it, I'm assuming, or my understanding is the way it is now is that we receive the DCs with the project or when the project is finished. Is that correct?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
When it's permitted? Well, we receive it in current time, let's say, not out of Mr.
Ciel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe we receive development charges as they draw their permit, right, currently.
Thank you. So currently. So now we have quite a change where they're 5 years, and I think at one point for something it's 10 years in the future. But even if it's only 5 years, that's how are we going to cope with that?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the development charges get frozen at the time of the agreement, but the freezing is supposed to, from what we're hearing now, for 2 years. There's still more information to come on that. I did attend a conference last week where there was some discussion about how that 2 years may not really be 2 years. It may actually be a little bit longer, but we're still waiting on more information on the specific regulations and how this is all going to work.
Councillor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So do we use these? We use the DC funds. We need the DC funds. So if we don't have them, we're still going to have to do whatever work was required. So how will that be reflected in the budget, even if it is a 2-year period for the freeze?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
So the DC funds, through you, Mr. Mayor, will be frozen at an earlier time, but that's why we're, as part of the community benefit charge study that we're going to do, we're also going to look at the development charges and amending that too, because there will be the option to include an interest charge, because municipalities will be allowed to charge interest, and we'll be able to include the financing costs as part of the development charge as well. So we'll need to take that into account when setting the rates.
Councillor.
Thank you. And if I remember from the consultant, I don't believe they recommended any community benefit areas for Aurora. So this is a change.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is a big change. This is coming as a result of Bill 108 and the changes that are in that bill. The community benefit charge is something that is completely new, and it's for what's currently in the development charge bylaw as soft services. So
Councillor?
that was the Parks and Recreation, library, municipal parking, and general government.
Councillor?
Thank you. I feel like we're in good hands. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I really like the detailed map on page 11, the planning and development. That was really spot on. I like that. Just a quick question about the 10-year capital plan, and there was a gap in the growth in new between 2026 and 2028, but then all of a sudden we have some new stuff in 2029, and I'm sure we're going to have very variable growth in new, but I just wonder if there was something specific that really tailed that off to none in those 3 years. Just shows no growth in new.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the details of that will be in the capital binders for the specific projects. We've been focusing mostly on the projects that are earlier in the plan, and like I said, we need to really start doing some more longer-term analysis, and that doesn't necessarily just include the amounts for repair and replacement for the asset management, but it's looking at everything as a whole.
Okay, all right.
Councillor?
I was just seeing a gap, and 2029 we started growing again. I was wondering where we stopped and went. Christmas decorations, I thought that was kind of cute. We won't have any more tree lighting mishaps maybe, which is fantastic. And I think Councillor Gartner already addressed the community benefit charge, and we're going to get some more detailed information about that as well.
Through you,
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we will be getting more information. We're still waiting more information from the province. What they have indicated is it should be revenue neutral to municipalities. Some municipalities are doubtful about that.
Great. All right. Thank you so much.
Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor, and thank you so much. I really enjoyed the presentation, and I love your methodology and your forward thinking in terms of how we can look at the projects moving forward, and really appreciate the whether, if it's either going to happen or not happen. I think that's a really big change in what we've done in the past. So taking it off or retiming it is fantastic. I think that'll help us understand exactly where we are and where things are going. So you can see how much is put aside and not spent, and it's really a timing issue. So I think if we can approach it that way, it'll be a lot more clear cut. So appreciate your approach. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Gallo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, just on that same point, I'm trying to understand the process. If we feel in the past, if we feel more information is needed on a particular project, we would request it and it would come back, which would kind of fit in the yellow light, conditional approval. In this case, and just of note, while it speaks to council has reduced its available capital budget decision points from 3 to 2, I don't think we've made that decision. I guess it's a suggestion to go this route. Kind of suggests that we've already made that decision. But I'm curious because it's an interesting strategy on how we would go about doing that.
Mr. CL, you want to answer?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the intent behind this was to a couple of things we're hoping to emerge from this. One is we recognize that last year in the capital budget process, council as well as staff agreed that there wasn't enough information for many of the items. And so we wanted to put the onus on staff to make sure that they've got a solid case for any individual asset or capital expenditure. The yellow lighting process added a whole bunch of work this year in terms of completely redoing reports. It set off timing for some of those projects because we couldn't move ahead with them. And so we're trying to switch the onus on staff to make sure they have a very clear case at budget time, one that is sufficient enough for council to decide whether it's good or not good to go. If it's not good to go, then we also want a little more clear direction. You just want to push it off to another year, or you just don't want to, you want to see this removed from the 10-year plan. So we're hoping that this will be a clearer process, and we'll put the onus on staff to give better reports in the budget. At the same time, it does switch a bit of onus on council to perhaps, if there is a clarifying thing between now and the budget process, to ask some of those clarifying questions, and maybe we can head off some of what otherwise would have been a yellow light and a whole report and a delay. So that's what the intent is. Of course, at the end of the day, we're at the will of council, and frankly, if at the end of the process you effectively yellow light it, then we'll certainly abide by that.
Councillor?
Thank you, and I appreciate that, and I don't disagree, and like I think you said, if there is something that does require more information, obviously, we feel confident in moving a project forward. Maybe we just need some more bits, and that's obviously that door is still open. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. If I can ask that the reserve balance slide, number 30, be just put up. I just wanted to get some more clarification around that one. It's page 30 in our hands. It's perfect there. So it's always been, through the chair, it's always been my understanding that our total reserves are sitting somewhere between, I think, $80 or $100 million, which doesn't necessarily reflect it here. And so I'm guessing that, it's not showing all of the different reserve balances, but that's one question. And then I guess the other one that's just catching me a bit is the fact that it says, I think it's the DC line is showing 0 is our balance. I'm looking at the graph. So maybe you can just give me a little bit more detail about the graph, because for 2019, I'm assuming that the tax levy reserves and the DC charge, that graph, it shows at 0. So I'm just wondering why.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So first of all, these are the reserves that are just for capital projects. So these do not include any operating reserves. So that's why it's not the full picture of the reserves. I'll have to get you more details on the exact reason for the starting balance. I don't have it here with me, but we can bring that forward back at Budget Committee.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I just think that, because it's a public document, it goes out, it doesn't necessarily reflect some of the other information we've shared in the past with regards to our financial health picture, which, for the most part, our reserve balances are healthier than most municipalities, and we've certainly been proud of that fact. And so I just wanted to make sure that nobody gets the wrong impression from this particular graph. So happy to chat about it on Saturday on the 5th.
And,
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
And through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mayor. These reserve balances also do, again, reflect the pre-funding of capital. So once capital has received that approval, that has been taken out. So there's probably actually more DC money sitting in existing projects too. It should also be noted that I believe in 2021 we've assumed the approval of the Library Square project as well, which is part of why you see that dip in the development charge.
So I guess the argument could be that this graph reflects the unattached funds that remain. Everything else has sort of been attached to various projects, and even though they haven't been implemented, they're there in the wings. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for a great presentation. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Van Kessel. So on slide 28, you see that in 2021 there's a big reserve draw, which pretty well, causes the reserve balance to be in negative position. And when you take a deeper dive, which you put on a previous slide, majority of that is from new and new builds. So could you confirm, is that draw from Library Square, or is that from a different source?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can get that information and bring it back to you. I'm
Okay.
just looking over to Jason to see if he has the answer. I think he's looking it up. We'll get that information and bring it back.
Sure, that's fine.
And it
No-
will be, more details are included in the budget binders that you're going to receive later this evening.
Okay, sure. Yeah,
Counselor?
it's just that the draw there was just so significant. It pretty well burdens the rest of the subsequent years. So I suspected it was Library Square, perhaps. But I couldn't help but mention you said that growth pays for growth, and so maybe offline we can talk about that, and I'd be interested to hear your perspective. Thank you.
You see me shaking my head. I don't believe in that. Sorry. Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? I just have one thing. First of all, thank you for the presentation. It's your first budget, so thank you. We're looking forward to it. But I do have one question, and I know this might be a tough answer, but the region approved a 1% accelerated roads program, so 1% to the tax levy. Are we going to see any of that money for any road work within our capital budget? I already know the answer, but...
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the roads that were identified by the region were actually down in the southern 3 municipalities of the region.
Wow.
And that can be found in their budget documents that were presented in February.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, and that's why I didn't vote in favor of it at the region, so thank you. All right, council, call a vote to receive. Just to receive the presentation. Don't put it in your hand. That carries. Someone like to move the report? Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gartner, sorry. Any comments or questions to the report? Councillor Gartner.
Thank you. It's actually Mr. Gartner's report. Thank you. On page 2, it's under background, but it does come up farther in the report. Our plan, well, actually our policy, is talking about mitigation that we have to mitigate for climate change. And I'm wondering, that's part of the provincial policy and our policy, if I remember correctly. So is there a monetary figure that's going to be in the budget? We have one for a study for this year for 200,000, but going forward, are we going to be putting money that's directly dedicated to climate change, or is it going to be included as part of our projects? Will it be like a subsection of our projects, or do I need to take this offline?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at this time, we do have the study for climate change. I think from that study, we'll get more information about how that's going to impact capital projects in the future, and it will be needed to be considered as part of capital project development, particularly for construction projects.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. CEO. Mr. CEO, the study that we're doing, the consultant we've hired, does that have to do with the community, mostly with the community energy plan? Or does that have to do with the town's own initiatives?
Mr. Waters.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The study is to, I believe, take forward the recommendations of the energy plan, and deals with it both, I guess, on the town basis and also beyond that as well in terms of the overall municipality.
Councillor.
Thank you, and Mr. Waters, you you missed a lot of background on this. I perhaps it wasn't fair to ask you, but I don't believe we have a community energy plan. We have a corporate. We kind of have a corporate energy plan, but we don't have a community energy plan that was under the provincial laws. We now have to have a community energy plan, and I don't think we got anywhere with it, and we've been waiting. It's finished.
Mr. Waters.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe that plan is in progress now. It's underway.
Thank you. So this money, this $200,000 in the budget, is to take what the recommendations in that plan and carry them forward? So it's under studies?
What page are we on, Councillor?
Oh, I have no idea. I'm going from memory, but I could try and find it.
Ms. Wainwright Van
It's
Kessel?
under the, it's a study. I thought it was under studies.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there will be more detailed information included in the budget binder, including a full budget sheet on the climate change adaptation plan. So I think it would be good to have this discussion at Budget Committee about the specific projects that are included in the budget this evening.
Thank you, and I'm satisfied with that answer. Thank you.
Councillor?
On page 5, it's at the bottom. It says the town's current 10-year capital plan is 44 million less than last year's. This change is mostly attributable to the 2019 placeholder of 35 million relating to Library Square. As we don't really know how Library Square is going to turn out, and we could be at a $50 million dollar project. Do we need to put any kind of a placeholder in this budget if we don't get the government grants that we're looking for?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are looking into that more deeply, particularly with the grants. But again, I would really like to have the discussion about specific projects at Budget Committee. And there will also be more information coming about Library Square later this year.
Councillor?
Okay. And the same with a kind of comment with the fleet. So we're not going to put anything in the budget for the fleet until we get the information back from the consultant. And that's going to come to council, from what I understand from the report, during the budget year. But wouldn't it be wise to put something for fleet as a placeholder in the budget?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have the reserves available to be able to fund the fleet initiatives. It's just we need to know what those specific fleet requirements are going to be, and we're not going to know what those are until we get the details of the consultant study. So I think anything we put in there at this point in time, it would be too early, and it wouldn't have enough information in there to satisfy council's need for approving the project.
Okay,
Councillor?
I'm not clear on this because last year, when we were going through the budget, we had an item for fleet. And if I recall correctly, we took it out because we wanted to wait on the consultant's report before we put any money into the budget for fleet. So I'm not sure why, what the reserve, did we put money into the reserve fund for fleet?
And Mr. CEO, but I just mentioned, I think Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel said during the presentation that the consultant report's not complete yet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. The consultant study is still underway.
Sorry, I did that.
Sorry. Through you, Mr. Mayor, as I mentioned earlier, the consultant study is still underway. We do contribute money to reserves for fleet. So the money is being contributed particularly for the repair and replacement reserves, for replacing our existing fleet. And we do collect development charges for public works fleet equipment too. So the money is there. It's just that we have not designated it through this budget until we have that study and the results from it.
Mr. CEO, you want to add to that?
Through Mr. Mayor, in terms of last year's process, all the fleet items were initially yellow lighted. We brought back a few of those items that where we brought back a report. I believe the lawn equipment, and there was one or two other ones. I can't remember which ones, but we brought a couple forward. The council agreed to green light. The rest of them, though, we've held back, and we haven't made any draws from the reserve. So, and then this year, so far in the capital budget, we've put nothing in at this point.
Councillor?
So then for clarification, we're not asking, the money for fleet is in the reserve. It comes to us as a budget item coming out of the reserve. We're not asking the taxpayer for that money in that budget year. Is that correct?
Mr.
I
CEO?
seem to be missing
To you,
one.
Mr. Mayor, the reserves grow on their own by virtue of the various policies and procedures that we have in place. So development charges have a component for fleet. Our cash to capital would include an allowance for replacements of fleet. So those funds flow into those reserves. The capital budget process is the process by which council draws on those reserves and funds specific projects. So the money is building. We have we have money that we didn't spend last year that we intended to spend on fleet, not all of it, because some of it you did approve. And then the component that would have been in fleet this year, we've just held it back because we don't have specifics. And we'd rather come with the benefit of the fleet study and a recommendation from staff as a result of that fleet study as to what capital we suggest council should authorize. That report, when it comes forward, will frankly be 2 years worth of capital for fleet replacement.
Okay.
Councillor?
Thank you. I can't remember how we were going to fund it, but from what you're saying, we're funding it from reserves, not from the taxpayer directly in that budget year. Mostly, for the most part. Thank you.
Is that all, Councillor?
Actually, that is.
You're at 5 minutes. Perfect timing. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Just a comment, really. In the report, it talked about the fact that repair and replacement reserve performance is not projected to meet the 10-year plan. Hence, that's why some of the conversation in the report about funding strategies and our cash to capital contribution to meet those requirements over the next 10 years. But I did have a question, but Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel answered in her presentation, because I think what's important is not only to have a funding strategy, but I think as part of the next steps process, we should continue to look at the life cycle of these assets, make sure there's an optimal performance. I know last term we had conversations around roads and whether or not the pavement quality index of 65 was the right number in terms of the repair and replacement of it, because all of these things impact the long-term draw on our reserves. And it was encouraging to see in Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel's presentation where part of that whole continuous improvement will also be to look at these life cycles, make some decisions with around fiscal policy. So it's not always just a question of us continuing to increase cash to capital, but taking a hard look at how we're using these assets and what the right level of replacement is.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I just want to, say it's a positive development that on page 9 of 19, where that table shows that from 0.7 to 0.9 to 0.9 to 1. So it looks like our reliance on supplementary tax revenue is eventually coming to an end at 2022, and so that's a positive trend and positive news. I thought that it might be ending a year or two earlier, but that's what that table is stating, and so that's positive. The question I have on you mentioned on one of the bullets on page 2, it says modernize the modernize the capital planning process. I was just curious what exactly is modernized.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, the way we do capital budgeting is the way a lot of municipalities have traditionally done capital budgeting in the past. And that includes taking projects and approving them in their entirety when they come forward. One of the things we need to start really looking at is the timing of when we actually plan on completing those projects and bringing those active capital projects back every year as part of the capital budgeting process to see how our commitments compare to what the information we have now. And that aligns with some of the comments that I've heard in my short time here with council about concerns of the value of capital projects, where capital projects may be way underspent or overspent, and then we can do that adjustment on an ongoing basis. So we can look at our capital commitments on a regular basis, along with how we're cash flowing our capital. This also includes taking a harder look at asset management and doing asset management over a longer period of time. So I'm not just talking over 10 years, but really starting to look at asset management more over a 100-year period of time, where we can start considering the replacement for those long-term assets, particularly the underground assets, which have lifespans of upwards of 80 years. So we can make sure that when we know we're going to have to replace these assets, that we have the money to be able to do it. Because when we get to that point, and we have a lot of those underground assets ready to be replaced, we need to make sure we have the funds available, because otherwise, it's going to put a huge burden on future taxpayers.
Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Van Kessel. My next question is, in terms of the shortfall for 2020, we have a shortfall of 1.6 million, and some of the options are to do some borrowing off of the other reserves. And other than the federal gas tax reserve at 2.9 million, tax rate stabilization at 4.5, and some of the other reserves have been taken up by other projects. Can you confirm, are those the two reserves that you're looking at, or are there other reserve funds that are viable objects to fund the shortfall here?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Page 7. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah. You're looking at page 7?
Yes.
The table on page 7? Yeah, so during that period when we do have the shortfall, it'll be drawing from other reserves. So when we do interfund borrowing between reserves, we actually have to pay interest to ourselves in those reserves where we're using the money. So it's kind of almost like an internal debt, but we don't actually go out and issue external debt. It gives the municipality a little bit of flexibility, especially as growth can be it can change over time, and as well as the asset management needs over time do change. But again, when we get to doing some more of that longer term analysis, part of that is factored into it too. Like, how do we need to do some interfund borrowing? What does our growth picture look over the longer term as well? So to make sure that we have the reserves that we need and the cash that we need to pay for our capital.
Councillor Kemp?
Thank you. I understood the the internal borrowing aspect. My question is, do we have a target reserve fund that we're going to leverage to fund the 1.6 million shortfall? Or is that something that we're going to discuss during the capital budget time?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so it's not necessarily actually taking money out of any other specific reserves. It's managing the reserves as an overall. So it does mean that we have to pay interest to the reserves that do have the positive balance, where the reserve that has a negative balance, we have to charge interest to it. So we manage them more as a collective by not necessarily borrowing from specific reserves, but we manage them as a whole.
Okay.
Councillor?
Thank you. Okay, so it's like an overall macro reserve fund with no name on it, but it represents the whole surplus. Okay, got it. And from the rate-funded perspective, I recall a year or two ago, Mr. Downey talked about the stormwater ponds and how we have over 200, and that's going to be a big project in itself. Is that part of the 10-year plan from a rate-funded perspective to foresee and plan for the maintenance of those ponds?
Councillor, is there a specific page that you're looking at?
No, it's just
Or
we
is it
talk
just
about tax funded, we talk about rate funded, and we know that over the next 10 years, the stormwater ponds needs dredging and it needs a lot of maintenance. So I'm just wondering whether this 10-year plan and capital investment plan incorporates some of that as well.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes and no is the answer to that. We have been working with development engineering on identifying all the ponds as well as ditches and culverts within the town that carry stormwater. And we are been having conversations with the Conservation Authority as far as a partnership on how we can deal with these in the future. We propose coming back to council with a report requesting that we engage a consultant to assist us in developing a strategy with regards to how we deal with these ponds. Presently, we have some information that has been provided to us by development engineering, but it isn't complete. So some money has been allocated in our budget for stormwater management. However, we feel at this time it isn't sufficient. However, I can't at this point put a dollar figure to that until I have a little bit more information. So yes, money has been allocated. Has enough money been allocated? No, but I don't know how much more we need at this point.
Councillor?
Thank you. So would that consultant report be in time for the 2021 budget?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's our hope, is something that we will be introducing to council in the 2021 budget, and certainly something that will be a long-ranging plan that's going to take a number of years in order to address. I believe that ANCA has presented council already with some figure, somewhere around $43 million for storm ponds at this point, but as I say, that is that number has to be substantiated. That's old information that created that number, and we just want to make sure that we give council the full picture.
Councillor?
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, call the vote. That carries. Let's move to motions. I will pass the chair to Deputy Mayor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would you like to move your motion?
I'll move as is.
Okay. Seconder, Councillor Humphreys. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm just going to start off by reading from our Aurora Promenade Plan, Vision and Pillars. The vision for the Aurora Promenade: to evolve into a vibrant place to live, shop, work, and play, inviting to pause or stroll along its entire length, encouraging people to experience it on foot, a passage into and through town where a narrative unfolds with every passing block telling a story of Aurora's past, present, and future. And so, I mean, I guess this is part of that, and by all means, this is not the be-all, end-all. I think this is just one piece of a bigger puzzle. I think there's many things to come forward within the revitalization of our downtown through the redevelopment of Library Square. I think with the Armory, the redevelopment of the Armory, Niagara College coming in, there's many things that are exciting and moving forward within our downtown core area that is going to help with that revitalization. I believe that this is something that will help encourage, create a focal point. Something that will attract people from not just within our community, but also from outside of our community to come to our downtown core and experience it. Sometimes you need something unique, and I think that this is something that will bring that uniqueness to the area. And so, I've actually been thinking about this for quite a long time, and I just felt that this was the right time to bring this forward. While I'm asking, and I know there's some concerns as far as the date, November 23rd, to have it in time for the Under the Stars parade, but I'd like to see it at that time. But by all means, I'm not looking at holding staff accountable to that date, and if it doesn't occur by that date, that it would be a problem. I think it's just asking them to look at trying their best to deliver it by that date. I did want to make an amendment to add a clause to this. Like I said, at this point, I would like to make that amendment, and that would be that the scope of the capital project number 81016, the Aurora Promenade Streetscape Design and Implementation, be increased to include the installation of the canopy of lights at an upset limit of $100,000.
We have a seconder, please. Councillor Gilliland.
And just quickly, I figured that this was, when I wrote the motion, this was missing. Where the money would come from, how much money roughly we would be looking at spending, and so I just wanted to put that in there for everyone to have an understanding that this is where it's coming from. Our streetscape design and implementation plan is actually at currently it was It was set at 730,000. We will be discussing it next week at General Committee, and there will be some changes within it, but I felt that that's the area that this should be coming from. And as you see, the BIA is supportive of this, and I thought that putting an upset limit also allows council to be comfortable with how much we're looking at spending, and it also gives staff an idea of what we're looking at and the type of designs that they can look at within that budget scope. And then it allows for staff to go ahead and do this without having to come back to us.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, any questions or comments on the amendment? Councillor Gallo?
Just on the amendment, do we have a balance in there, and could we just get a sense of where that money comes from?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so the project was conditionally approved and at $730,000, so it does have some funding associated with it should it be approved, the condition be lifted. I believe the report that's on the agenda for next week is only at $450,000, so the funding has already been considered as part of the capital process.
Yellow?
Thank you. I was wondering if the mayor can just speak a little bit more to the canopy of lights. Is this a permanent installation, sort of year-round? Just to give a little bit better picture for those of us that, while we've seen them, may not know all the details.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, no, the idea would be for it to be year-round. And as I said, it's to add a uniqueness, an attraction piece to the downtown core. Now, while there's 2 attachments in there and 2 pictures for everyone to kind of take a look at and get a sense of what it could look like, by all means, those pictures do not depict exactly what it would look like. That would be for staff to work on and develop the look. And whether they cross or whether they're straight, that would all depend on the feasibility on what we can do within our downtown core and with the structures of the buildings that we have. And the way it would look would come from staff developing that. As long as we can keep them, and that's why we want to set an upset limit. So to say that within that amount, design it, and then go ahead and put it up.
Thank you, to you, Mr. Chair. I love this idea. I think a lot of residents have been asking for something similar to what you're presenting today, and talking about revitalizing the downtown core, and those lights are something that really attract a lot of people just to come in. It's warm, it's inviting, and it's exciting. I'm glad you made this amendment. It was one of my questions I was going to ask you prior to making that amendment. But just leading up to this project being a capital project, could you expand a little bit more, since it is year-round, an expected operational cost of something you maybe have considered that we need to maybe include in the operational side and the maintenance?
Did you want? I was gonna say I did have some discussions with our CEO, but I mean I believe we wouldn't be looking at we're not talking about a large amount. It would be minimal cost as far as from an operational side and maintenance side. I think once they're up, and depending on the type of lights we do, LED, they would last longer. So, and the amount of energy that they would draw on from our hydro, it's overall we would get that number, but obviously, so council can feel comfortable with that number. But I don't think it's a significant number that everyone would be concerned about. But if our CEO wanted to elaborate on that, but no, did I do a good job? Thank you.
Something that you would want to include on this for us to implement or include in our operational budget as well? Would that be appropriate here or no?
It's something we can add in. I just don't think that it's a significant enough number. I mean, it would obviously be added into within our budget for us to look at, but I don't think it's a number that would stop us from whether we would move forward with this project or not.
As long as there's an expectation, we all understand, that's all.
I suspect If it's going to be, the lights are going to stay on, I would imagine that majority of the operating costs would be pure power costs, and we are getting rebates back from the hydro company from LAS, and as long as the LAS and is not responsible for putting up the lights, and we don't have Cobra heads, we'll be fine. Any other questions? Yeah, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favor? Oh, we'll put on the pad. On the amendment to the main motion. That passes, Lee, and with that, I'll pass the chair back to Mr. Mayor. Oh, we'll go back to the mayor. We're going back to the main motion, sorry. Councilor Humphries?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing this forward. I'm really excited about the lights. I think it's going to add a lot of special character in the downtown core. And personally, it's exciting for me because I've been trying to get us to spend some money down the core. This is the first, and I can't wait till next week's meeting to start looking at that promenade plan and see where we need to invest in our downtown core. This just is going to add to some of the streetscape that we really owe it to our downtown core. So thank you for kicking this off, and looking forward to our meeting next week to see what else we can do to help down there. Thank you.
Councilor Gallo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as I'm sitting here, just a question on how far we flush this through in terms of attaching things to private buildings, and not uncommon, but I'm just wondering if any hurdles in regard to that, or does council need to do anything to help that cause, should there be any resistance from the landowners that may not want to have something attached to their building? They are private, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And there was some initial conversations with that, and that's why there was some conversations with the BIA. And so the BIA spoke to some of the property owners. Everyone that's kind of involved is excited about the project and really wouldn't have a problem. Obviously, we would have to do our due diligence and set up some legal agreements because we're affixing something to their property, and also considering that one owner owns 15 of the properties, it's not that difficult of a thing dealing with one person. So if we have to skip one building, and that's why I say that the design of how we lay it out might change. It might not be a set standard design, and depending on how we work with the property owners and how it's going to develop, it might kind of set on what that design would look like.
Those issues.
Mr. Chair, and I would say yes, unless it goes above the upset limit of 100,000.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. This is to Mr. Mayor and Council. I think this is a big deal. I'd like it to come back to Council. I'd like to know what the design is. And anyway, that's my opinion. As we had a conversation, Mr. Mayor, it would be great if these lights could be solar powered. For many reasons, but hopefully staff will look into that. And the same with how, windstorms and intense rain might affect it and how we can plan for that. I'd like to see examples of other similar initiatives in other cold weather communities. I think if you have a moderate climate all year round, that's kind of one picture. And then I don't know if there are any communities in Canada that have implemented this.
Distillery District in downtown Toronto, Quebec City. Just to name two.
True, the Distillery District. Thank you. Forgot about that. And the other thing that I'd like to address is potential light pollution, because we have residential areas on either side, and I hadn't thought of this before. The top design looks like it wouldn't cause any problems, but this second design here the bottom might be a little bit too much. So that's something that we could keep in mind. Would you consider having this brought back to council for the final, look and design approval? I'll make an amendment if anybody wants to second. I'll make an amendment and see if council would like to have a look at this again before it goes up. Would anyone like to second my amendment? Okay. It's in your court, Mr. Mayor.
Downey, did you have a comment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize, but within the body of the motion, it identifies a date of November 23rd, which the date causes us some concern. As you can appreciate, it's a lot of work to be done in a very short period of time. And if that's the desire of council, then I request that council also waive the procurement bylaw so that we can move forward with the sole source with our existing electrical consultant and start working with them because this project would be above what would normally go through a sole source process.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Downey. Someone like to put forward an amendment to put a waiver on the procurement bylaw? Mr. Mayor, seconder? Councillor Humphreys? Questions or comments on the... Councillor Gallo?
I just, I don't, that doesn't sit well with me. I'd like to know what the rush is if we're going to be going down that road. My preference is to follow the process and let's do it right. I just don't see the value in speed tracking this. I won't be in support of that.
A regular process for procurement, what date are we looking at?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I couldn't give you a date. I can tell you we won't make November 23rd, and that's our concern. So a date is actually attached to the notice of motion. So certainly as staff, we would do our very best to try to meet that date. But I can't do that and go through our normal RFP process and have proper public tendering process. So if the date is removed, then we of course go through a proper process. But it would not be up in time for this year's parade. Thank you.
I guess my concern would be that it might not be ready for Christmas, given the procurement process, perhaps. Councillor Gardner, on the amendment?
Process is very important, and we've discussed it many times at this table, and I would like process to happen. And I understand the mayor's excitement and council's excitement to have this ready for the parade, but it seems to me that the higher good here is to make sure that it's done right, that all the research is done right, the staff is satisfied. So I can't agree with the amendment, and I'm not sure. I'm really not sure that we should be rushing on this. I really want it to be fantastic, and it's not a lot of time to ensure that we're doing it right.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I mean, following process is important for sure, and procurement. Is there any way that, through you, Mr. Chair, that someone can help expedite the procurement process? I mean, it is September. November 23rd is not. It's 2 months away. Can we not just? It's not a huge deal. I think we can go out and process it a little more expeditiously, and perhaps come up with the same result. I'm just wondering. I understand why the rush, but it is Christmas. It's exciting. We want to have a downtown fun situation, a lovely situation. But I mean, following the process, is there any way we can do this? Just wondering through you, Mr. Chair. I think the CAO has some comments.
Mr. Downey,
No, the CAOs.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the way to expedite the process is to waive the procedure procurement bylaw, because the bylaw right now stipulates the timelines that these things have to be out on the street, stipulates the limits under which we have to go through a full competitive procurement. And so Mr. Downey's raising the point that in order to get through that process, we'd have to waive the current provisions of the bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gilliland for the first time on the amendment.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Has council, since I have been on council a short period of time, have we waived procurement bylaw before?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm sure we have, but I can't think of when. I mean, there are occasions that come up where it's in the best interest of.
Next week.
There was an example, WAMCO and the water meters, where we wouldn't go through the normal procurement process. We'd ask council to authorize a sole source. Thank you.
Sorry, I missed, but I had a hard time hearing AMCO.
Through Mr. Chair, WAMCO, it's on next week's agenda actually for the water meters, because it's one source for water meters, one distributor, and so rather than go through a competitive process that isn't going to get anything, we've asked council in next cycle to waive the procurement bylaw and allow for sole sourcing.
Okay. I mean, I understand processes in place and we're trying to expedite things as best we can. These are lights, they're string lights. It doesn't seem like a really complicated product that we're trying to outsource. I feel comfortable with waiving the procurement bylaw in this instance for the greater good. I think we've been talking about it for a long time in order to have these lights. I kind of feel like we're capable of choosing a light that's going to work for the downtown. There's probably very limited selection out there, and I'm confident that we could make that decision in-house.
Thank you. A little bit with regards to social, but just, I'm a little hesitant. First off, I think it's a great idea. I'm supportive of the concept. I'd like to see it happen. Yes, it would be nice to have it up and installed in 60 days, but I'm concerned that not only are we going to waive our process, but we're all being driven by the date, and I'd hate to see shortcuts being taken on the design, on the installation. This is something that's going to be permanent and stand hopefully the test of time. And I agree with some of the other comments that we want it to be spectacular and we want to get it right. And I'm just concerned that the date is driving the whole process. And it's 60 days. 60 days to figure out the design, 60 days to the installation and all this stuff to get it done. And that's what's driving everything. And so my comments aren't too much about the sole sourcing. I can see where there's, some concerns there. But it's just the overall piece about the date driving this initiative as opposed to just, going forward with it in our normal process and making sure that it's the best thing possible.
And I have to agree, but I have an idea that you may like, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if it's the January blues or the February blues or whatever month it's supposed to be after Christmas when people need a little bit of extra cheer. So maybe we could make this a whole extra event where we light up Yonge Street. Because the Santa Claus Parade is pretty terrific as it is. Yeah? Okay.
Thank you. Any other, Mr. Mayor?
And as I stated at the beginning, I'm not opposed to changing the date. I just kind of want to light a little fire under staff to see if we can get it done by then. If it can't be done, then, that's fine. I have no issues with looking at a little bit longer date. I mean, it'd be nice to have it at that time. It'd be nice to have it up for Christmas. It'd be nice to have it up in February. Just kind of want to, move along. Because, as we all know, within government circles, things tend to take a very, very long time. And so sometimes you have to light that fire to get people moving a little bit. And so sometimes I like to push the buttons and like to get people moving a little quicker, because that's how you get things done sometimes. And so that's what I like to do. But I'm not opposed to making a change to the date.
Question for Mr. Mayor. If through the normal course process, the light doesn't get ready until December 10, is it still worth your while to continue it for this year?
Could you say that again? If
Like
it's not,
if through the normal course process with our regular procurement process, that the completion of the lighting doesn't happen until December 10, or
I'm
is
fine with
there in
that.
your mind a date before Christmas you would prefer to have this done, or it's
these are more just it'd be nice. So as I said, it would be nice if it was done for the parade. It'd be nice if it was done for Christmas time. But if it's not, it's not. It's just that it would be nice if we could do it by then. And like as I said, sometimes you have to light that fire to get it done. But as I said, if the word around the table is that we don't want to waive the procurement bylaw to allow for sole sourcing, that's fine. My question, I guess, to you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, if we didn't sole source it, is there like a maximum time frame? Would it be able to get done within Christmas time? Would it possibly be able to get done by February?
Actually, I think Mr. CAO would like to answer that.
To you, Mr. Chair, I'll take Mr. Downey off the spot here. We don't know, quite frankly, enough about this to know what to give a very reliable date. So I wouldn't want staff to put a date and then people would be disappointed around that date. I also want to point out that even removing the sole sourcing doesn't necessarily mean that it happens in November or December. I mean, we haven't had these actual discussions with the tenant, with the landowners, et cetera. So there are some other barriers that might emerge. But absolutely, Mr. Downey's right that without sole sourcing, there's no way it's happening by November 23rd. And beyond that, I think that date, as I said to the mayor, I thought the date was a challenge right from the start, but that we would make a best effort, and until we run into the specifics of why it can't be done, then that we would take that as direction. So.
Any other questions or comments on the amendment? Okay, so if we can put that to a vote, please. Okay, that is not passed, 4-3. We'll go back to the main motion as the first amendment, main motion.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair, I'll just remove everything past Mosley Street.
Can we
Obviously not the second clause, but everything after Mosley Street in the first.
Okay. Councilor Humphreys agrees.
Good.
Canopy of lights on you. Okay. Councilor Thompson?
Thank you. Just with regards to it running from Wellington Street to Mosley, I mean, we have Library Square. There's certainly lots happening there. Was the decision to end it at Mosley Street because you foresee it continuing on after Library Square has been finalized and including that component, or was there some other reason why you chose to stop it at Mosley Street?
Currently, if you look at it right now, it would be almost impossible to run it all the way down to Church Street because there is no building after Mosley Street on the west side. And so therefore, there'd be nothing to attach it to affix it to. It would be very difficult. I mean, I guess you could do it to a street light, but you would need enhancements to those street lights too, and that's part of the issue as far as doing it to the street lights. Is there an opportunity to continue it? Absolutely. That's something that we can look at as there's development within the area, with the redevelopment of Library Square, with the United Church coming in. There's those opportunities to look at extending it.
Yep, thanks.
Any other questions or comments on the motion as amended? Okay, we'll put that to a vote, please. Okay, that passes unanimously, and pass the chair back to the mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kim. We have no regional report. New business. I will start to my left. Councillor Gallo.
Just a question on process. How does a community, what process would a community take to have a delegation under community presentations in the budget, in the agenda? Just come to the clerk and say,
During budget or just in general?
in general, under our
Our
council.
community presentations?
Yeah.
Mr. Clerk, under community presentations.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor, community presentations are generally meant for organizations rather than individuals. So basically, we would still require a delegation request to be submitted. We just might put it under the community presentation setting, which allows us in an agenda where there's maybe a controversial topic or something to have more delegations about that topic. So it's the same process as the delegation. We just term it a community presentation when it's an organization within the community.
Councillor?
They don't necessarily have to have an agenda item in order to delegate and present.
Mr. Clark?
I guess that's the difference between a delegation and a community presentation.
Well, I think there's a difference also between general committee and council as well, as far as whether it has to be an item on the agenda or not.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, per the procedure bylaw, even a delegate at general committee doesn't have to be about an item on the agenda. So either way, that would be acceptable.
But at council, through you have to have an agenda item in order to delegate, but not necessarily if you want under community presentations, you don't have to have the reason I ask, I'll be doing a community service report, but the soccer club is doing Oktoberfest and wanted to delegate and was told that they couldn't because there's no agenda item. And I think they could have fit squarely within the community presentation and could have come in and delegated. I'll do it anyway, but just for future reference, I think any group should be allowed to come in and under that category and not necessarily have to have an agenda item.
So, Councillor, and I'm not going to disagree, and I think that maybe that's something that we can look at when we're dealing with the procedural bylaw, and maybe it's something that we can specifically put in there and try to...
I think currently under the bylaw, they would have been able to...
No, and I agree with you, but I'm just saying maybe we can just clear it up, just to make sure that there's no misunderstanding as far as what's allowed and what's not allowed, and so that way we have a better understanding, and that way something like this doesn't occur again. Because I agree with you, that it shouldn't have been a problem or an issue for them to come in.
I'll do it anyway, but just...
Sure. Thank you. Anything else? Oh. Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gardner. New business.
If I could go back to the board meeting highlights from Lake Simcoe.
Yes.
With respect to the correspondence, I don't think we were on the same page there. What the highlights says that there's a disaster mitigation program for a mitigation project, but if you look at the correspondence, it just says for flood mitigation projects. So I don't know if it's a specific one, but I'll find out. I think that's kind of a typo. With respect to Councillor Thompson's comment, it's a high-level forecast to the end of 2019. They're talking about a slight deficit of $82,000 and they're saying that's less than 0.4%, so they're not considering it to be significant. But there, under that section, there are some risks and opportunities that I was trying to explain, and I did a very poor job. But there's 4 separate inclusions under that of risks and opportunities that may mitigate that. Thank you. And the last thing would be what the clerk and I were playing with before, which is under S1, page 9, which is the GC report from last week. It says that I'm inquiring about the timing of the 3 upcoming stormwater management reports. And it says streams, state of maturity report, and the reconstruction of storm sewers on Poplar Crescent and Henderson Drive. I may have misspoken. I apologize to the clerk if I have. But the 3 studies are the Stream Management Master Plan, the Tannery Creek Flood Relief Study, and the State of Maturity Report. So if I misspoke, could that be corrected?
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you.
I'm seeing a nod. Yes?
Thank you.
Is all, Councillor Gardner?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Kim? New
thank-
business?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to just ask Mr. Waters on the side, but I'm sure I'm not the only one that's been asked this question about the wooden fencing that I asked you earlier today on the Treasure Hill development on the south side of Wellington, across from the SARC. I think a lot of people have noticed the wooden noise barrier fencing. I guess many of us didn't realize how high the elevation was going to be in the backyard. In the subdivision plan and the site plan you forwarded, we were all under the understanding that there was going to be bushes and trees to kind of help to cover the fencing, but it's hard to say how close the plant life is going to be from the fencing. Do you know offhand, like, is it going to be? There's already some small trees on the boulevard closer to the road, but that's not going to really help in the next 15, 20 years. Can you just confirm, just from the map that you sent earlier, whether there's going to be additional plant life and some trees planted closer to the noise barrier?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The landscape plan that was part of the subdivision agreement does show extensive landscaping along the fence to essentially hide the fence as the landscape matures over time. It's a combination of shrubs and trees. There's also armor stone that's being placed in strategic locations. So it's intended to essentially hide the fence over time, and to make the streetscape more pedestrian friendly and to provide some green along that edge. I should just add that it's in a pretty rough state now. So you have to give it some time to build the fence and then to actually do the landscaping and for it to mature over time.
Okay.
Councillor?
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland?
Thank
New
you.
business.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. Just a quick follow-up on the residents that were here in regards to the sidewalks and the policy change that we had. And although I did read through it, it did specify that residents did have the opportunity to still delegate and state their case. So I kind of felt that they still had their right. But I wanted to know if there was a best practice in place for communication being sent to the community before construction commences, in this case for sidewalks.
Through
Mr. Waters?
Through Mr. Mayor, there is a process whereby staff do send out notices to the residents that are affected by the infrastructure project. There's an open house held as well, and there's also notices posted on the city's website.
Councillor Gilliland?
So in the case of the sidewalks on Bailey and Davidson and such, and they said they had received their letter, was like dated September 9th or something or other. They only felt like only had like a week to respond. Are you suggesting that they had other opportunities that they were notified prior to that?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's my understanding, yes.
Do you have, through you, Mr. Chair, is there a notice that's sent out like even earlier than that, or is it just a 1 week notice? Would it be fair to say, you know, send out that notice maybe a month in advance? Most people don't go to their mailbox, you know, on a daily basis. It's usually the 1st and the 15th, and people could miss, and maybe that's a missed opportunity, and perhaps we should be sending out those notices a little bit earlier, since our policy has changed a little bit as far as, you know, the voice that they could have when they come and delegate.
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can review the notice period, and if it requires to be increased, we can definitely do that. Typically, we would follow, you know, the Planning Act notification, which is approximately, you know, 12 days. But we can have a look at that and increase it. There's no harm in doing that.
Councillor?
Thank you, that satisfies. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Kim, you had one more?
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland, for bringing that up. Just one comment on the sidewalk item. I didn't get a chance to say it last week, or forgot about it earlier, but you know, we do have the sidewalk policy of 2009, and Mayor Marcus, you had your motion on the complete streets last year, and you know, when you look at the 10-year, you know, repair and placement plan, you look at the streets that are up for sidewalks in the next 10 years, I can tell you that there's going to be a lot of items like what we had, incidences like last week, where residents are adamant that they don't want sidewalks. And so, you know, I guess my question to staff, and it's just rhetorical, you can, you know, consider it for future, is that there's no point in having a policy if half or a good chunk of these policies are not going to be adhered to because most people don't want sidewalks in a residential neighborhood. So I just want to put that comment out there, and maybe, you know, we could maybe revise the existing policies that we have and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. I do have one. Surprise, surprise. Highland Gate. You know, it's probably more of a comment. You know, it is very frustrating because you go out to the site and you see a mess. The grass is not being cut. There's garbage flying around all over the place. Fences are either half up, half down. The agreements for the fences aren't being upheld at this point, and I know that they're waiting to continue to build, and so they've been putting that stuff off. But my concern is the fact that if this was a resident and their property looked in the state that this property looks in, we'd be all over them. They would be in court by now. They would have citations, or we would be cutting it and sending them a property tax bill. So I guess, you know, what I wanted to put out there is that maybe we need to finally go back to the developer and say, you know what, we've had enough. You need to upkeep this property to the standards that we expect. And if you don't, well, then the next motion coming from the mayor's office is going to be a motion that to direct staff to go out and clean up the property, cut the grass, and we're going to charge you for it. Because I think that we've had enough, and I think that our residents had enough, and I think we need to do something about it. So, Mr. Waters, if you can relay that message to them, because I think I'm a little bit too upset to even give them a call and tell them this. And I appreciate that. That's it. Public service announcements. I'm glad I got that off my chest. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Registration is now open for 2019 fall recreation and aquatic programs. Pick up a copy of the Community Service Program Guide at our recreation facilities, Town Hall, Aurora Public Library, or the Aurora Cultural Center. You can also view the program guide online at aurora.ca/recguide. One more announcement I wanted to kind of bring to attention is that we do have not a town event, but there is an event that's going on at the Greystones restaurant on Friday, September 27th from 7:30 to 11 p.m. There is a pianist featuring Chris Christopher Rolko, and they're bringing in a grand piano, and they are local musicians. So I encourage, if you are looking for a nice tribute to Elton John, that this would be a lovely evening for you to go out. I hear the event is nearly sold out. And if you need any information, to contact Janice Marsh, and I believe, there's no contact information, but there is a Facebook event page, or you can contact Greystones. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kim.
Our next Town of Aurora e-waste event is on Saturday, October 13th at the Joint Operations Center from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Have you recently replaced a computer, phone, or television? Drop off all your unwanted or obsolete electronic devices to be safely recycled. For a full list of acceptable materials, please visit aurora.ca/e-waste.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank the TD Bank for doing such a great job sponsoring our concerts in the park this summer. They were great. And also the Highland Gate Ratepayers Association sponsored 2 of them. So thanks to all of them. The town of Aurora is developing a community energy plan that will capture Aurora's energy use today and provide a strategic plan on how to move forward towards a sustainable energy system. So we want to hear from people. We want to know what the biggest concern is about energy, what we can do as a community to improve energy efficiency, reduce energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. And as part of that effort, town staff will be at the Aurora Farmers Market this Saturday from 8 to noon to get your comments. So please come and share with us. And Mr. Mayor, do you have any idea how people can also share about this if they can't come to the town park? Or anybody? Mr. Waters is going to jump in
Mr.
on this
Waters?
one.
Through Mr. Mayor, they can check the town's website to provide comments, excuse me.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson.
The Central York Girls Hockey Association has partnered with the Toronto Marlies to bring an AHL preseason game to Ray Twinney Recreational Complex on September 29th. This game will be the first time the Marlies have played in Newmarket since 1991, when the Ray Twinney Recreational Complex was their home ice, and the Marlies were known as the Newmarket Saints. To purchase tickets, go to marlies.live/Newmarket.
And
Let's hope our colleagues in Newmarket, announce Aurora events too.
Well, I was going to say, and that's the last time we announced something from Newmarket. And actually, the only reason is, and we might want to mention that, is that they were the Aurora Panthers, and they've changed their logo and their name just to capture more of funding from right across the region. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Councillor Gallo.
Don't miss the Colors of the Fall concert on Thursday, October 4th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Aurora Town Park. Enjoy a tribute to Gordon Lightfoot, a corn roast, pumpkin carving, and more. For details, visit aurora.ca/fall concert. As well, the Aurora Adult Soccer Club is organizing its first Oktoberfest on Saturday, October 5th, from 12 to 11:30 p.m. at 510 Industrial Parkway South. There will be an official keg tapping, live music, raffles, games for kids, and a Stein carrying contest. Guests are encouraged to get into the spirit by wearing Oktoberfest clothing. Tickets are just $15, so bring your friends, family, and associates to enjoy this culture-filled experience. For more information and tickets, please visit AuroraOktoberfest.com.
Thank you, Councillor, and I think we're all looking forward to showing up to Oktoberfest. Pardon? Actually, yes, we have a budget meeting, so we better hurry up. Councillor Gilliland, do you have something else?
Thank you. I just was able to get the contact information, so I just wanted to kind of express that. You can buy your tickets there, $20. This is the tribute to Elton John at Greystones at eventbrite.ca, and I thought I'd also mention that the event is in support of Music Aurora, and partial proceeds of the tickets will be donated to that organization as well. And the person to contact if you want to ask more questions is Janet Marsh at mjanet.marsh@gmail.com. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. I just have one thing, and it's actually a past event. So last night, and Councillor Gardner joined me at the Aurora Public Library, and it was the first York University Scholars Hub occurring, and it was an incredible lecture by Dr. Ruth Colzar Green. And the conversation was basically about wampums, treaties, and relationships between guests and hosts. And it was very riveting, very, it was emotional. It was everything all wrapped into one, and I think everyone took a lot away from it. And it was an exciting opportunity to partner with York University, and I believe it's the first of many to come in these lecture series happening at our public library. Councillor Gardner, did you want to add something?
Can't improve upon your comments. You're absolutely correct. It was sold out. So when these are coming forward, please, sign up early. But also, it is the public library, and you can come and just stand around if you want to listen.
Yeah, and you're correct. It was sold out, and I think there was 150 seats reserved. Yeah, and it was a packed house. It was an incredible event, and we're looking forward to many more to come, and the partnership with York University. All right. Bylaws. Mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Kim. Call the vote. That carries. Confirming bylaw. Moved Councillor Gallo, second Councillor Kim. Call the vote. That carries. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Kim, all those in favor, show of hands. Opposed, that carries. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.